He's the Monday morning quarterback, and it just happens to be Monday, and always generous with his time. Whenever we call, he is available. Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback, their senior NFL reporter, who joins us here in the man cave. Good, Albert. There he is. Look at him once again. If we had,
here?
Yeah, you'd be right there, right next to me.
All right.
But if we did have an Octagon insider, NFL insider, I got like Glazer is going to win that.
I've got reach on everybody though, I think, right?
Could you take? So I take Glazer off the board. Can you take Adam Schefter?
I mean, I think I'm younger. I'm taller.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, Paulie.
Schefter stockier, low profile, lower to the ground. Albert, again, does have reach and confidence.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter King, you could take.
Nobody could hit Peter though, right?
Oh, just because he's
too good a guy.
too nice?
Too good a guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't do that. No way.
But if you had to. If you had to.
I put him in a headlock just so I didn't do any real damage.
So you just put him to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You get the first question to the commissioner today.
Yeah, so you asked me this before. I think there are 3 uncomfortable questions that he could be asked today that I think, to me, probably need to be asked. Number 1 is the Rooney Rule, which there were 10 head coach hires. It's all done now. Not one African-American hire. There are only 3 African-American head coaches left. There was only 1 minority hire. That was Robert Saleh to the Titans. So that'd be number 1, is do you feel like you've taken a step back? It also happens to be in the year they canceled the Accelerator. They generally had this networking event for minority coaches in the spring that this year they canceled it. There was some suspicion that that was done because of the deal they were trying to do with the current administration, the merger, right? Like that there were some moving pieces there.
Wait, explain that. The Accelerator.
So, well, I mean, at the very least, there were rumblings out there that while the merger was going through, because the Justice Department needs to approve it.
This is NFL Network and ESPN.
Right. That there were rumblings that they were going to do what they needed to do to appease the current administration to get this stuff pushed through. So at the very least, I know there were people that felt like it was bad optics that they were canceling that event, and that they had a photo op with the president, if you remember, to announce the 2027 draft in the Oval Office. That was the first photo op that a sitting commissioner has done with a president in 22 years. So you had the combination of the merger, the diversity event getting canceled, and then the photo op with the president all happening at once. So there were people that put those pieces together. So I think there are big picture questions that need to be asked on the Rooney Rule. Another uncomfortable question is what we all saw with the Epstein files on Friday, right? Multiple NFL owners named. Obviously, one I think was on a completely different level than the rest. How does Steve Tish's involvement in the Epstein files affect his ownership of the Giants going forward? And then the third uncomfortable question, I think, is more of a football question, which would be the state of officiating. Because I do think to some degree, it's just there's not enough I don't know how you guys feel watching it, but I cover this stuff for a living. And it's hard for me to tell. And I know how this stuff works. It's hard for me to tell who's making the decisions. You know, so like the lack of transparency, especially when you're doing business with the gambling companies the way that you are now, does there need to be more transparency? I've advocated, I think, and this isn't on the officials themselves, but I think they've just continued to pile new technology on top of new technology on top of new technology, rule change on top of rule change on top of rule change. They've tangled it up and made it so hard for the officials to adjudicate the game out there. And to me, it's like, you've seen what it looks like at field level. It's a blur.
Oh, my God.
You have to train your eyes to look for things. And if you're giving guys 15 new things to look at every year, points of emphasis, rules changes, and then on top of that, they know Big Brother's watching, right? They've got the camera watching, and so they've got that in their head. It just feels like this is something where we have all this technology now. Maybe it's time to rebuild the thing altogether, right? And figure out a better way to use the technology, because just taking the old system and piling technology on top of it, I don't think is working.
They need to subtract. I keep saying stop adding, start subtracting.
And that's what I'm saying. Tear it down to the studs and like find a more efficient way.
Can we
to use the
listen?
technology.
Do you think we'll get to the point where we get to listen what the conversation is during a replay?
It's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of that.
The ACC is doing. I've said it for years. If you have nothing to hide,
right?
If we're all in it together to get it right, let's listen. Like the Broncos interception, like that's not even reviewed. I don't think.
I mean, it was so quick, and that was the problem Sean McDermott had with it, right? It wasn't that like they.
But even with the timeout, though.
Right, and he tried to, and but it just felt like it was rushed through, right? And so, like, what's the process there? And I do think, I mean, maybe you don't give it to the fans in the moment, but you give it to them at some point. I mean, I don't know. I guess the downside to that would be potentially vilifying an individual, vilifying an official. That said, that's what happens to the coaches and players on a weekly basis.
But we don't remember you if you get it right. We remember if you get it wrong.
Right.
So if it exonerates you, now I know that, go back to the Rams and the Saints in that game.
The pass interference call.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a helmet to the head as well. They could have called two things. If you put together an all-star officiating crew, nobody wants to rat out somebody else and say, you missed the call, and you can ask for help. And I think if you have your team together that you're with the whole year, you got my back.
Yep.
I'm not going to remember you if you get the call right. I'll remember if you get the call wrong, and I think that's what the NFL needs to do.
And I think that's why I've always advocated for the Sky Judge, like having that person be a part of the crew in the stadium.
Yeah,
right.
I'm fine
that
with
person
that.
should be there.
Yeah.
And like I just think having the man behind the curtain in New York, who may or may not be worried about what public perception is going to be on Monday or Tuesday, like having an experienced official in the booth as part of the equation when it comes to the on-field crew, and they're accountable to each other, and that guy up in the booth, like he has to see the coaches before the game on the field. He's accountable to the coaches. He's accountable to the players too. I felt like that was an answer, maybe not the answer, but one of the answers that we could get to all.
He's the Monday morning quarterback, Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter. How does the commissioner answer the Steve Tisch Epstein file question?
My guess would be,
how would you pose the question?
I would say, how are you going to handle? Maybe I will be the one to ask it. How are you going to handle owners appearing in the Epstein files, and how are you going to separate one from the other? Because I think there were, I want to say it was four of them so far at least have surfaced in the Epstein files.
But the Tisch one.
But the Tisch one is like a different level, or at least it reads that way. Now he's put out his statement, but it reads like the other ones are just sort of tangentially involved. I'm almost hesitant to name them because there's no proof that they're actually involved in the real horrible, horrifying, like the wrongdoing there. But like with Tisch, it's like, okay, like how do you separate that? And then can the NFL go forward with a guy who is in this sort of who now has this on his record and is representing the NFL, right? And they always say they hold the owners to a higher standard. Well, this has got to be something where you prove it and you show it. And so it'll be interesting to see the way that one's handled.
Does the commissioner care about the voting process of the Hall of Fame? Will that question come up?
He's not really involved in it. That's the thing. It's like,
but it's still the NFL,
right? And that's what people don't really recognize. The NFL doesn't run the Hall of Fame; is its own entity. Now, can they influence it?
But
sure.
It is in conjunction with.
Right, and it does reflect on the NFL because most people aren't like you and me. Most people don't. There's no distinction for them, right?
Yeah.
So for most people, like if something goes wrong with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, most people are. What you're saying is most people will associate it with the NFL itself. I think he could definitely, have an audience with them, and this particular case is fascinating to me because, for everybody who doesn't know, they've grouped the seniors together now with the coach and the contributor. I think the main problem now is the seniors, by definition, are almost last chance candidates, right?
Yeah.
So you almost have, if you're a voter, you almost have to treat those as I'm going to get one shot to put this guy in. Whereas with Bill Belichick, with Robert Kraft, you might get multiple shots. You've already gotten multiple shots to put Kraft in, right? You're probably going to get multiple shots to put Belichick in. And so to me, the way I would vote it if I had a vote is I would look at each of them as yes, no. And if there are 4 yeses, I take the 3 most emphatic yeses, right? I think the way other people are interpreting this is, well, this might be my last chance to get this guy in, so I'll get around to that guy later. And I just think so much of that being left to interpretation is sort of the problem here.
But do you think it's a coincidence that Belichick didn't get voted in? Or is this a small group effort?
You mean like there's people banding together against him?
Yeah.
I don't know that. So I talked to a handful of voters. This came up in New England on one of the shows I do, and a producer asked me, "Hey, could you just look into the chances Kraft and Belichick have of getting in?" So I poked around and I called a handful of voters I knew, really well and trust, and every one of them said, "Well, Belichick, there's no question. It's going to be 50 for 50." And so I started looking at Kraft's candidacy then as okay, if there's 150 votes, because that's what it would be. Everybody gets to vote for 3. There are 50 voters, and Belichick gobbles up 50 of them. Well, then it's going to be harder for any of the other 4 guys to get in. And so I think for a lot of the voters, it was genuinely stunning that Bill didn't get in, and they were surprised it wasn't unanimous. So there's some divide there on the way that people are interpreting this, and I was shocked. I mean, I can't believe 11 people didn't vote for him, And I'm normally one of these guys. I look at that that's a hard job, you know what I mean? And you've got people's legacies in your hands, and that's a really difficult. How do you separate one person from the next? That's all. So I've been hesitant in the past to say yeah, that guy's an idiot for voting this way, because I don't have a vote, so I don't I haven't been in that spot. But this one to me is so overwhelmingly obvious. It's the greatest coach of all time.
Well, nobody's getting in first ballot. No coach is getting in first ballot.
I mean,
after this,
yeah,
no one.
I mean, I think it's ridiculous that Mike Shanahan's not in. You know what I mean? And I said this last year. I think it's he won 2 Super Bowls. He's been out for over a decade now, and half the league is running his offense.
Yeah, that's true.
And more than half of that group of offenses is run by people who worked for him. You know what I mean? So you go down and you look at his tree. I mean, it's right there with and he's part of the Walsh tree, I guess, right? Because he worked for Seifert.
Yeah.
But it's as big as the Walsh tree was, or bigger. And his influence on the game has been so immense. So I look at Shanahan as that is so simple for me. And Bill won 6. I don't know. It's crazy to me, because I do think it's one sport. I agree players should get in over coaches generally. But it is, having covered the league for 21 years, I think it's the sport where the coaches have the biggest influence in winning and losing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's 18 games, 17 games, and then you got the playoffs, and yes, you're going to make a bigger impact week in and week out. I find it strange that we're now parsing what was Belichick's record without Brady? And I go,
right.
Did we do that to any other coach in history where we did this? And the answer is no. And if you said, hey, he cheated, okay. And if that's your reason that he cheated, fine. Just tell me. But don't vote for him next year because he's still cheated.
And that's what the first ballot thing kills me.
I know.
It just kills me, because I'm all right, so now you're the judge, jury, and executioner. To me, it's a yes or no question. It should be hard to get in, right? And so to me, it's not I'm not ranking the Hall of Famers. It's either yes or no. And if I have to vote no on somebody because there's a limit on how many people I can vote for, then so be it, right? If there are 7 deserving guys and I can vote for 5, and that means I'm leaving 2 deserving guys off, and that's the reason why they're not first ballot, so be it. But it shouldn't be, well, I don't view him the same way as this other guy. It should be the 5 most emphatic yeses if you have 5 votes. And in this case, I don't know how you could look at that list, and it was L.C. Greenwood, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, Robert Kraft, and Bill Belichick, and say he's not one of the 3 most deserving guys in that list. That makes no sense.
All right, real quick, the best coaching hire and the most questionable coaching hire.
I mean, it's hard not to say John Harbaugh, because I think he's going to be a real difference maker for the Giants. I am fascinated to see Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta, because of everything that he dealt with in Cleveland. And I think he's a much better coach than people realize. And I think when you look at him, like how there was a groundswell of teams coming after him, right? And the Giants were in on him, and Tennessee was in on him, and Miami was in on him. And it was, I mean, I'm just telling you, like the pursuit of him, it wasn't quite what it was with Harbaugh, but it was not far off. And that tells you what the league thinks of him, you know? So if the easy answer is Harbaugh, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. That puts you on a different plateau. But, I mean, Kevin Stefanski is not far off. I mean, the one that people have the biggest question on, I think, is going to be Mike LaFleur in Arizona, which I think is really reflective of them having a little bit less to sell. They've got a complicated quarterback situation because Kyler Murray has guaranteed money, not just this year, but next year. Shout out to his agent. That's pretty incredible. So how do you separate, right? Like from Kyler Murray, and you know, so like that. I think Mike LaFleur, because that was a job that I don't think was seen as being very desirable. You're going to be attached to a GM who's going into his fourth year, so you're now on his timeline. That one, I think, is going to be challenging. And I think it's sort of indicative, honestly, Dan. I said to you last year, right, that I think I said that it was like Stafford was going to be the big story, right? And I think it was for that month after. And I think I had the Steelers getting Stafford. They wind up with Rodgers instead. I think some of these teams out here are going to quietly take big swings at quarterback and call teams you wouldn't think that you'd be able to call. And I think that that's going to be a big piece. Now, we're going to have, like, the reclamation.
Would you take a swing at Joe Burrow?
I would call. I mean, and that's sort of what I'm getting
Okay.
at, you know? Like, I think teams are going to call Cincinnati on Joe Burrow. I think teams are going to call Houston on C.J. Stroud. Now, please don't aggregate this and say anyone is shopping anyone, because that's not what this is.
Good luck with that.
That's not what this is. But when you look at the makeup of where we are, right? And look, Fernando Mendoza, I mean, fit him in silver and black right now. He's going to be a Las Vegas Raider. There's a massive drop-off. There's not another quarterback that people are excited about in this year's class. And that's even if Trinidad Chambliss winds up in the class. That's including Ty Simpson. Like, there's just not another one. And even Mendoza isn't seen as, like, the way Caleb and Jaden Daniels and Drake May were. I think Fernando Mendoza would have been the fourth quarterback in that class. So because of that, teams are going to have to be a little bit more creative. So do you call Cincinnati on Burrow? Do you call Houston on C.J. Stroud? And then you have, like, I think the more natural reclamation projects which would be Mac Jones, who the Niners would be able to get something for because his contract is very reasonable. You know, Tua Tagovailoa, Kyler Murray,
Malik Willis.
Yeah, so like Malik Willis is a very interesting name. Does Jeff Hafley bring him to Miami from Green Bay? You know, John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley were with him in Green Bay. So I just think that I just think this year, because of the draft class, is going to require creativity, which I think will cause some teams to at least pick up the phone on a sort of all they can say is no basis, you know?
He is the Monday Morning Quarterback, senior NFL reporter Albert Breer. Thank you for all your contributions this year.
Of course.
We'll take a break. We'll give you our best and worst of the weekend right after this.